Welcome to the Live Fit Listens podcast, a safe space of growth, personal development, and overall wellness with your host, Olivia Catania. Diving into the realms of all things health, conscious living, mental expansion, and much more, this podcast is designed to help you evolve into your best self and live fit. Let's get into the show. You guys, hello. Welcome back to the Live Fit Listens podcast. Welcome to the freaking 100th episode of Live Fit Listens. I have so much to unpack in this intro. As you can tell by the title of this podcast, it's a super exciting one. I need to preface by apologizing first and foremost because I did not intend to leave you guys hanging for literally 5 weeks at this point. I had such an amazing opportunity to record the podcast that you're about to listen to, and it was right on schedule, but unfortunately I didn't have access to the recordings after the fact, and so it took some time for me to actually gain access to the recording, so it was unfortunately out of my control, but so that was the reason why I wasn't able to access the files, get this episode edited, and get it out to you guys. And I really wanted this one to be the 100th episode because it is so exciting, so that's why I didn't go ahead and record any other episodes outside of this, like on my own time over the past month. But I really hope you guys can forgive me and understand that it was totally worth the wait because this podcast episode is truly the most exciting one for me, honestly. And I'm so glad that just within divine timing, this synchronistically fell on my 100th episode. So as you guys can tell, we have our first guest on the podcast, which I'm not counting my family. No offense to my family, but like I have had family members on if you've been an avid listener for some time, but I've never had like a legitimate guest, like someone I don't know, like someone outside my family. I've never had an actual guest on my podcast, and that's been a big goal of mine, honestly, last year, but especially this year. That was something I really wanted to step into, and I had the beautiful, amazing, talented, wise Kela Rose reach out and ask if I wanted to record together, and I was like, absolutely. So if you don't know Kela Rose is the host of the Skinny Dipping podcast. She also is on socials. I will have all of her podcasts, her social pages, everything. I'll have everything linked down below in the description box. But she is basically what this podcast is about, but like on steroids, and of course with her own spin and in her own way. But she speaks amazing wisdom and advice all about mental health, emotional intelligence. She's just, I feel like, truly has the greatest advice, and she's so well versed in so many different areas, and she's so eloquent and well spoken, and I just am so absolutely honored to have her on as a guest on my podcast and also be a part of this 100th episode and be my first ever guest. Like, this was such an amazing opportunity, and the conversation flowed so well. Like, I had an outline for this episode and we didn't even pay any attention to it because our conversation was just flowing so insanely well, and there was just so many good nuggets in here of just wisdom and good tokens of advice that I feel like you guys can really resonate from, and a lot of relatable things that we really candidly and vulnerably discuss between the two of us. This is definitely a lengthier episode. So there will be timestamps down below in the description box, as well as all of her socials and everything. If you want to find her, I highly recommend her podcast and her channels, especially if you really like what this podcast is about, because like I said, she speaks a ton about mental health, emotional intelligence with some spirituality in there as well. I just truly am so thankful for this opportunity and to bring this episode to you guys as well. And I feel like it was such a great opportunity for me to connect with other creatives in the space. Like, if you don't know, I have a YouTube channel, I have this podcast, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I run my own retreats, and it's just me. Like, I do not have a team. I do work with an outside company to help me plan my retreats, but other than that, I don't have a manager. No one's coordinating my brand deals. No one's editing any of my content that I put out ever. It's all me. It's a one-man show. And so sometimes it's hard. It can feel really isolating, essentially, and I tend to be navigating this space completely by myself, and sometimes I feel like I'm, walking blind through all this and trying to figure it out as I go. So it was such a cool opportunity to be able to connect with Kela, get some insight from her, see what she's doing, and just feel kind of comforted by having someone who understands what this industry is actually like and being on the creative end of things. And also just, it was so refreshing to be able to work with somebody and to collaborate. Like, I don't have that privilege, honestly, that normal people, like with a normal 9 to 5 job I have, because I don't have coworkers, obviously, so just the co-creation that was going on was so cool. And I could go on and on and on about how much I loved collaborating with her, and am so thankful to have this opportunity. And I feel like it really helped me with my own confidence with the podcast, because honestly, speaking very candidly, having a guest on the podcast was something that really kind of scared me, or made me very nervous, because it would really lead me to having a lot of imposter syndrome. And I feel like it really helped to get my confidence up a bit. So I hope this is the start of many podcast guests, hopefully, in the future. Without further ado, I'm going to shut up, because clearly I'm about to make a whole other podcast episode talking about this podcast episode, because that's how impactful it was for me to record this. So without further ado, enjoy the episode. Thank you so much again to Kela for being a part of this. The timestamps will be down below if you want to skip to some certain parts. So I really hope there's some really powerful message in here that finds those who need to hear it. And I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, Kela Rose. Welcome to the Live Fit Listens podcast. Today we're on episode 100, and I thought it would be the absolute perfect time to welcome our first ever guest. Again, Kela Rose, welcome to the show.
Wow. I feel incredibly honored to be your 100th episode, to be your first guest. Like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, I'm obsessed with you. Like, I'm in love with your energy. Like, I'm just so honored to be here today. So thank you so much. I cannot wait to get into whatever this conversation holds for us.
Yes, I'm so happy to dive into it. I actually, like, a few months back, I remember there was a point where I was like getting quite a few questions of like people saying, I love your podcast, Live Fit Listens, but they wanted other podcasts that are kind of similar. And at the time, I didn't really have any that would come to mind that they would want me. They just wanted me to recommend like similar ones. And then a little bit later, I stumbled upon your podcast. It just was like recommended on Apple Podcasts, and I clicked on it. I was like so drawn to it for some reason. And I just listened to one of your episodes, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this is it. Like, I love everything about you. I love your delivery. I obviously find so much resonance in the things that you talk about. And I also feel like we have a lot of similarities in the sense of your interest, but you're also like goofy and silly, and I love that. And I'm just so excited to dive into the topics today and to have you on. My avid listeners know that I always start off my episodes with my gratitude, just so we can all remember to be practicing gratitude and be in that energy. So I always share one thing that I'm grateful for at the start of every episode, and I would love to invite you to join me as well if you would like to start. Just one thing that you're grateful for that you would like to share.
Wow, I love that. I'm grateful for spin class this morning. I went and worked my little ass out, and it was amazing to just feel that natural high, and I hadn't gone in so long, and it's just such a reminder that I feel like I have a lot of fire inside of me. So movement. I'm going to say my main gratitude for today is movement. I feel like it saves me every time, especially as somebody with really strong tendencies of anxiety and anxious thinking. I think that coming back to movement and moving my body is one of the only things that saves me from myself, saves me from my own downward spiral. So today, this morning, going to class, it's also Women's Day. And it was so cool to be surrounded by all these powerful women in class, working their little booties off, and just cheering and spinning around the towels, and that sense of community. I was just like, this is so special. Like, I literally started to tear up and cry, because I was like, women are so powerful. So also movement and gratitude for women.
Yes,
and
I love it.
I literally just love being a girl too. Like, I just love it. I'm just like, I love being a girl. I love connecting with other women in that way. Honestly, it's just so special. We get it in a way that other people don't. The way that we work with our cycle is so powerful. We literally, one of the coolest things my therapist ever taught me was that in some indigenous communities, they would do these like sweat circles, kind of like these sauna. It's kind of like a ceremonial aspect that they would do. And when women are on their period, they weren't allowed to enter the house that they did the sweat circle in, because they were more powerful than the medicine man within those communities. Wow. And they held so much power that they actually couldn't even be there when they were on their period. And so that like
Wow.
even just shows like women are so powerful. We are literally
Yes.
portals for fucking life.
Yes.
And that is my gratitude for today.
It's so powerful. Wait, this is also so perfect, even more aligned. First ever podcast guest on my 100th episode that wasn't even planned, and on International Women's Day when we're recording this. Snaps all around. And happy
Snaps.
International Women's Day to everyone listening. Wow, that's so beautiful.
It's
and
crazy.
That was something that took me a long time to really learn to love, like being a woman and like tapping into my feminine energy, because I grew up more so very much so in my masculine. I love my dad to death, but he's definitely very overbearing, and like we had some family things that made him kind of resent women from like things that he had gone through, and you know, he was very much so projected that on us growing up, and I have two other older sisters, and so that was like a huge like thing that I had to heal within me, was that feminine energy, and learning to embrace that and harness it and like be proud of it, because there is so much of it. Like we're fluid, kind of unpredictable beings, but that's what makes us so freaking beautiful, you know, and that is our power. So I love that gratitude. And also spin class, 10 out of 10. It's always so, the vibes are always so high at spin class.
No, I love that you said that about your dad, because I honestly like relate, like just being so forced to be in my masculine energy at a young age, being like the only girl, like the only child raised in like my house. I have 3 half brothers, but they were all older than me. So I was basically raised an only child. And it's just crazy because I feel like there was so much pressure on me to be so perfect, so on, always just being so in my action, which like I'm grateful for that also. Like I'm grateful that my parents taught me work ethic. And I'm also grateful that I've unlearned that conditioning that I have to do to be worthy. Like I'm just loving tapping into my feminine energy more and more and being like, I can flow, I can surrender, I can soften. I think that's a big message that's been coming up for me lately, is like, I want change, but change isn't going to come from force. Change is going to come from softening. And I think that's just like been a big theme. So I feel like we just relate on that so much, you know, like we've both been through it.
Yeah, 100%. I think being in your masculine energy, there's obviously pros to it. And like, it does get you far with certain goals and things, you know, it has its purpose, but there's also so many advantages to being in your feminine as well. And like you're saying, releasing that force, being in your flow, being in your surrender, being in your receiving mode. Like sometimes you actually need that as well to quote unquote progress, you know, in whatever it is metaphorically, you know. So it's like we need both of them, harness both sides of them to maximize it all essentially.
Yeah, it's totally the yin and the yang. I honestly have been really reflecting on that recently. I feel like you grew up hearing like yin and yang, like, and it's just like was kind of this thing that people just said. And in the last couple months, I've been like, wow, I'm actually like understanding what that energy means. Like, I need to move forward and be actionable, and also surrender and soften. I also need to be decisive and know what I want, but also be curious and open.
Yes.
It's like all these like little balancing acts that we create, and I always feel the best when I'm balanced. That's for sure.
So well said. It's also like kind of the law of polarity. It's like you need both of them to work in synergy 100%. I think there's so many, like I've always said this, my avid podcast listeners are gonna be like rolling their eyes because I say this all the time, but I feel like the yin yang symbol is like the perfect depiction of life itself, because not only with the masculine and the feminine, but like also with like the quote unquote the good and the bad, or just like the off and the on, just like the law of polarity of everything in life. There's a little bit of good in the bad, there's a little bit of bad in the good. It's like just the perfect depiction of all that life encompasses, essentially.
Totally. I so agree. And the image that came up for me is I'm actually training in pole right now. And it's one of the hardest things that I've ever done. It's a huge emotional threshold. I've been learning tricks that I never thought I would be able to physically do. But what happens in pole is when you're in the in-between, that's where it like hurts. And that's where you get like things squeezing your legs and bruising you. But if you're like going upside down, once you actually get to the counterbalance, once you're like at this perfect balance where like it doesn't seem like it should be easy, like once you actually get to the counterbalance in these poses, it's so easy to hold. And I think that's how I feel about life, is like if you're kind of trying to like struggle in this like in between and like and just be like, oh, but once you actually get to the pose and you just like sink into it and you allow the counterbalance of the masculine pulling you one way and the feminine pulling you the other way, you actually notice that you're kind of, you can hold it. It's like easy all of a sudden. It's almost like when you have a tightrope, like when you have a tightrope, you can't walk across it if it's not being pulled evenly on both sides. Like if one is dropping, you're gonna fall off the tightrope. So you need both to be like pulling easily to get this like counterbalance. So I feel like there's like this counterbalance in life where when we actually embrace being pulled both ways by the masculine and the feminine, we're like, this is actually easy. Like I can just operate in this like little in-between moment. And it's way easier than I thought than like struggling to fight for one side or the other. It's just like, oh, wait, I can exist here, which I don't know if that made sense, but that's like the image that came to mind.
That was like a beautiful, perfect metaphor. It's like kind of that like sweet spot, Goldilocks zone. And then it's almost like when you're in your flow as well, when you're in that, because that's when things are easy. You know, now they seem effortless and now they're flowing. That was so well said. Okay, my gratitude, circling back, my gratitude. Which,
yes, what's your gratitude? I want to know.
This is cliche, but I have to say it. I'm just so thankful for you and like for reaching out for this. And I just am so thankful for this opportunity to have you on and be able to chat with you. Like I've done this podcast alone pretty much for the past like a little over 2 years now. So I just love sharing this space with you and like letting you in. And I just am so thankful for this opportunity because I also feel like when back in 2020 is when I initially had that first thought of like, oh, this would be cool for me to do a podcast. So to think that I'm here now having my first real guest on 2020 Live would be like, this is so freaking cool.
Yeah, no, it's so fun to get to share the space and co-create because I get it. I have done like the solos forever and I kind of alternate. Like I'll go solo episodes and then I'll do guest episodes and I'll kind of do it like a seasonal basis. And for me, I love it because it keeps things interesting. But I realized that there's some things that I cannot think up alone. Like the ideas are co-created. So it's something that happens that's so special when we get to like bring both our minds and both our spirits together because it's just like you never know what's gonna happen.
100%.
Where like when I show up on the mic, I like also don't know what's gonna happen always, but like it's coming straight from me. Whereas like when we have two people, it's just like the magic is like limitless. You never know what's gonna happen.
There's more room for meshing, which I'm so glad you said that because that reminds me, I pulled like kind of an oracle card today, which I think you're kind of into those. So
yes. Fuck yes.
So I did. I'm obsessed with it. It's a deck. It's called What's in Your Stars, and it's kind of based like it's astrology themed. And I kid you not, I was like pulling cards today, and the bottom deck energy, which sometimes I feel like almost carries more weight to me, if you will, because it's like the overarching like energy. And the bottom card was collaboration. I literally have it here because I wanted to show you.
Oh my God.
It literally says collaboration and it says working as a group. It's exactly almost what you just said. It says working as a group can produce a result that far transcends what one could accomplish alone. Through mutual effort, solve problems by sharing ideas and defining collective ideals. The act of cooperation can provide a buzz of inspiration that lifts your spirits. Like,
it literally made me tear up. That's so beautiful.
I was like, that is so fitting for today. Like, I just couldn't believe it. And I feel like
I love that.
Yeah, especially like the end part, how it says it can provide like a buzz of inspiration that lifts your spirits. Like, I feel like especially kind of how you're speaking about it can be hard to also, when you're constantly creating alone, it's like, again, you kind of know what to expect, but there's just so much newness and something like a message so much bigger than just you when you can actually collaborate and like it's so refreshing, you know, like working with someone else. So I thought that was so cool.
I love that. And like what that brings up for me also is like I think it's so important for all of us to like talk about our ideas with like our friends. Like I definitely go to certain friends in my life to brainstorm and dream and scheme ideas because I know that once we're bouncing off of each other, we kind of get into this flow state where magic can happen and where amazing ideas can be birthed. And I think sometimes those ideas come to me when I'm alone, when I'm just like driving, when I'm in low stimulation, and those messages can come through. But even like when a friend has nothing to do with a project that I'm doing, I'll still call them up and be like, can you bounce ideas off of me? Like I have this idea, but I want to hear what you think. And I think to have people like that in your life is everything because it's just like we all should be able to kind of lift each other up in like a creative spirit way. And I'm just really happy that you and me are being acquainted because I already feel our energies are like so enmeshed. I feel like after this, we also have to talk like podcast stuff and like all like the things because I think it's so important to have other people uplift your dreams.
Yes.
Like, I genuinely believe I wouldn't be where I am with the podcast if I didn't have like the support from my really close friends and also like my partner. I think people upholding you and witnessing you in the highest version of yourself and just really being like, I know that you're gonna make it. Like, I know this is gonna be huge for you. Like, for me, like, that feels like this safety net. And I just think it's so important to let people in. I feel like we get scared to let people in on our big ideas because we're like, and it's important not to let everyone in on your big ideas. I will say that. Like, you need to be, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like, mindful about.
Yeah, and discerning and who you let in.
Discerning, yes, discernment. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Thanks, Liv. Yeah, but I think being discerning about who we let in, but also being open to letting a couple people in to your mind's map and the way that your mind works, because I think it actually uplifts us. Like, you don't have to do it all alone. You don't have to even brainstorm things alone. Like, we all have this creative energy. So yeah, I love that. The collaboration card coming through. Thank you, Spirit.
Yeah, you need to pat my back today. No, but I think you're so right. It really builds momentum, and that literally made me want to tear up because I feel like I've always struggled with this like feeling of hyper independence. It's like such a toxic trait of mine and I like feel like I need to do some shadow work of like figuring out why I have that or where it's coming from. But like I've had that since honestly I was like 18. I feel like it's also a form of self-sabotage for me in a way of like I need to be alone. I need to go do my own thing. Like if I just went in my own space and, you know, hunker down and grind, like I'll be able to do it. Like everyone's distracting me. It's kind of what I feel like sometimes. And so it's like it definitely is a sense of hyper independence. And I think that's something I've slowly been learning how important it is to have your circle. Again, not to let everyone in and you know, be mindful exactly how you said to be mindful of who you're sharing your energy with and all that sort of stuff. Because I think also it might have come from me experiencing friendships that were really weighing me down, you know, that weren't serving me and not necessarily having an abundance of friends that I felt like were lifting me up or like going in the direction that I wanted to go, you know, but it's so important to put in that effort to find those people and really cherish them when you do find them and hold them close because it really can 10x the energy in the room and make things seem so much more possible when you have that belief from other people 100%.
Totally. And knowing that like we can do it like this where you can meet friends online also, like so many people that have uplifted me in my career maybe haven't been in my life in real life because sometimes those friends like maybe don't see the bigger picture like from wherever you grew up. Like they're not going to see the bigger picture, but then like meeting friends on the internet like we're doing right now, like I've just been able to open up my mind for what's possible because I see like what they're doing. Right. So I feel like also being open to whatever form those friendships come in. Also, the funny thing is the reason that I said what I said earlier was because I totally felt that the hyper independence from you, like the fact that you've done this podcast for so long and I'm your first guest is definitely giving like I need to do everything alone. And it's like you don't have to do everything alone. I don't know if this resonates. So, and it might be a different reason for you, like a different subconscious programming of why that hyper independence comes up. But for me, I feel like I wanted to do a lot of things alone and I didn't want to delegate. I didn't want to let other people in because I was like, well, if I'm doing it by myself, then a couple things. I think I would be like, oh, if I'm doing it by myself, like if people aren't seeing me and they're not a part of the process, then they don't get to like see me if I fail. Like that whole like if I fail, then like no one will also see me kind of vibe. And I feel like that's where my self-sabotage would come in. I don't know if that relates, if that resonates. No, it definitely does,
yes.
I have a question for you. Okay. Like what do you think the reason is behind the hyper independence? Like what is because I know like the brain likes to do things to self-sabotage mostly for protection. Yes. That's like usually what happens. So what do you feel like it is for you? Because I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. Like I can relate to you saying this. Like I get into hyper independence too. And I feel like it's such self-sabotage. And it's just like, there's a bunch of different reasons why, but it's like, why do you feel like you picked that up, that programming?
I feel like, I don't know if it directly answers like the question of as to why, but I think a component of it that came up for me when you were just speaking about your reasoning, like I feel like it does come from kind of almost this fear that I feel like if I So, and I think it does come from my parents. I feel like that it can then be taken away from me if I involve other people, if that makes sense, or they
You
have,
can't depend on other people.
right, or like it'll give them power over me that then they can take it away from me, if that makes sense. And again, I don't know if it directly correlates, but that was just like a piece that came up for me when you were sharing why for yourself.
No, that's powerful. That's big. I definitely had a hard time delegating. Like, I didn't want to, I was so overwhelmed with editing the podcast. And, you know, I was finally making enough that I could begin to like bring an editor on, but I just like couldn't because I was like, they just like, what if they don't uplift my vision? Like, what if,
Right.
like you said, they could just like take it away? What if they're not on it? What if I can't trust people? What if I can't depend on people? And I have this like goddess deck card, and I remember for like months I just kept pulling the delegate card.
Oh my
Like it was
God.
like goddess Tara, I think, and it was like delegate, delegate, and I was like, fuck. And I could have gone out really searching and forcing it, kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning of the podcast. But I actually was just like, I literally said to the universe, I was like, I'm ready to let people in. Like, I'm ready to receive help to take this podcast, to take this project, this business to the next level, because I actually feel like I've taken it as far as I can on my
Yes.
own, and I'm ready to let other people in. And then immediately within like 6 months, I had Gwyneth reach out to me, who's my editor, and she was a listener of the podcast, and edited it she got the vision so clearly. She edited it exactly like I would, like to a T. Like, I brought her in. She's like the only person I trust to like move with my words. And then also like I signed with 2 managements who are able to like bring me in, you know, brand deals and like help the podcast grow and make money and help me see like analytics further, and just people who kind of know what they're doing a little bit more than me.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I could have gone out and like really been like, I have to do this, but I just opened up and was like, I'm ready to receive this. And within 6 months, so much was taken off my plate. Like, sometimes I'm like, do I work? I don't know. Like, I do work hard.
Yeah.
But it's
When
also
you're in
like
your
hardly
creation,
working.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like sometimes like, yeah, I decided I wanted to be more the creator of things, and then
Yeah.
having other people come on to help facilitate it and facilitate the editing and the brand partnerships and all those things. So I think you're also definitely at that level where it's time to welcome people into your team. That's what I like to
Yeah.
think about it. It's like, it's my team.
Right.
Like, and with the team, we're able to take it further than we are alone, which I feel like is even what we're doing today is like
Yeah.
co-creating this conversation is able to take this. Like, I did not know hyper independence was going to come up today, but girl,
I know, me
I
neither.
felt it in the air. I've been
Yeah.
feeling it the last like 2 weeks, like the feeling of hyper independence being challenged. So I
Yes.
love that this is coming up.
I know. No, I had like a mini outline for this, and like this isn't even, none of this is on the outline, but I'm totally chill. Now we're having like a business consultation call. No, but I love it so much because I do think it's relatable, and I think it totally applies for no matter what you do for work or even like in your hobbies and just like in your life. Like, because I also know a lot of people would relate to feeling like they can't stick with their routines and they go and the goals that they have if they let their friends too much in their personal life. And I think it's just about finding the right ones and having just a little bit more trust, you know, in those around you, and that you're attracting the people that are meant for you and that will uplift you. And by you taking care of yourself and protecting your energy, like you will hopefully come into alignment with people who are doing the same, who values that and who respects that, you know. And I think a big
Beautiful.
limiting belief for me, I feel like, is especially with the podcast, I always felt, I mean, even today I was a little bit nervous, and you're like the most approachable person ever. Like, again, the perfect person to have on. But like, I think I just was more nervous of feeling like I wasn't at the level or like ready yet to be delegating, to have a team, or to be interviewing people. It definitely was kind of like an imposter syndrome, you know, that was coming through, that I think a lot of people deal with no matter how qualified you actually are or how much experience you actually are. And I'm sure it comes again just from these limiting beliefs that we all have, but it's just about working through them, you
Yeah,
know,
and
hearing them and releasing.
totally. And the opportunities come before we're ready. That's like
Mm-hmm.
what I've realized. Like, I'm like, the opportunities come before we're ready. And it's like up to us to then like rise and meet them. And I feel like you're doing that so beautifully. And like, how amazing is it that you get to embody crossing that threshold of bravery. You're not just sitting here and talking about it, like you're fucking doing it. Like having a guest on, like that's a threshold of bravery that you're crossing. So you should be super proud of yourself. You've created something super beautiful. And you are at that level. So I support
gal.
you.
I appreciate it. No, but I feel like it is so important also to do things that scare you more often. You know, like I was like, I'm nervous for this, and that's why I need to do it. Like I've been saying, I've wanted guests on for so long. Like I'm sure very hardcore listeners have been like, sure, Liv, we'll see when you actually get someone on, because it's been like a year. And so it's like actually following through with doing the things that scare you. Those are usually the things that, you know, where growth lies, and usually those are the things that are calling you that you should be taking action on. Like the things that scare you are usually the things that are good for you to be doing, that will expand you, that will take you further, you know.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And also giving ourselves grace at the same time, being like,
Yeah.
sometimes it does take a year for the idea to be embodied.
True.
I find that, like, and I give myself so much grace in that. Like, I have been saying that, you know, I want to go and kind of go on like an independent travel pilgrimage. That's kind of what I see coming up for me later this year, is like 6 months of traveling by myself, which I've never done. I always travel with my boyfriend of like, we've been together 9 years. So whenever I travel, he's always there because it's like, he's my safety net. And I've just been like brewing this idea that I need an adventure that shows me that I'm independent and capable. And this has been brewing since August. And I honestly don't think that'll go till August. Like 2023 to 2024, sometimes it takes a year to embody, to fully understand, to fully be ready. And it's okay that the ideas that we have don't happen instantaneously. I think that's a misconception, that as soon as we think it, we have to do it. Like I think in some scenarios that's true, but in other situations, it's okay for it to simmer and boil a little bit, and for us to like prepare ourselves for the moment and then leap. And I think that it's also important to give ourselves major grace when going through big life changes or doing something scary or doing something brave. It's like, okay, sometimes it takes some time to work out there, and we shouldn't expect ourselves to just have to completely like uproot or whatever, you know?
Yeah, to jump when you're not ready. I love that, and that was so validating to hear, because I feel like my brain, I'm always constantly conflicting between, I have more of like a spiritual side to me, quote unquote, that's much more intuitive. And then I also have the side of me that was very much so learned of like hard work, you know, check off the boxes, take the action, do it. And again, we need both, but it's like sometimes I forget to have grace with myself in that regard of like, yes, you can have these great, brilliant ideas. And then that discipline part of myself is like, you need to go take action on it now. Like ideas have a shelf life, blah, blah, blah. Like nothing's going to happen if you don't take action. But there is totally the other side of the equation of like, if it's not resonating now, like you'll take action when the time is right. And I do believe that. Like, I think even us, this was kind of in conversation back in November when we first kind of made contact, you know, and it just so happened that it didn't land now, you know, in March.
Totally.
And I think that was also for a reason, you know. I think divine timing is always happening right now. And so I think you're so right. I love the way you said that. And I think so many people need to hear that, of like, you can have your idea and not need to actually take action on it until you feel ready, you know, until the stars are kind of aligning, until it flows and feels right. Like now this feels easy and it makes sense for us to have done it now, you know, like I didn't need to go search for a podcast guest or go out of my way and like be searching like, who should I do it? It's like, this was something that fell into place at this time, you know?
Totally. And urgency, I've realized, is a trauma response.
True. Like, I saw one of your videos you posted on that and I was like, yes, I love it.
That like blew my mind when I realized that. I was like, and you don't have to rush. Like the rushing is such an act that's rooted in that fear and rooted in that anxiety. And that's how I discern, like, is this my intuition telling me I need to have discipline and action and go for it? Because sometimes it is like ideas do have a shelf life and we got to move on it now. And sometimes that is true. But is it moving from this place of, I love this idea, this is the time, this is the moment, I must seize the day now, carpe diem? Or is it, I need to do this because then I'm going to lose my opportunity and there's all this fear and anxiety fueling me? It's like, what fuel are you running on? And the more that we can shift our focus to doing things fueled out of love, out of knowing that it's the right time, that's when we feel our best, and that's when it happens in divine timing. Like, we don't need to rush anything. Like, I think back to moments in my life where I really thought I should be somewhere else at a certain place, like whether it be with a business or a relationship. And I'm just like, I feel like I should be here by now. And then I look back like a year, 2 years, 3 years later, and I'm like, thank God that didn't happen then, because then I wouldn't have been ready. Like, I
Yes.
wouldn't have been fully in my power to make that happen if that happened too early. Like, I needed to learn the lessons in between so that I could fully take the moment at the divine time.
Right. 100%. And maybe the gap, if you will, between that initial idea and then actually taking action is kind of the foreshadowing of like your soul knowing what's coming. And then you said it perfectly, like your soul is prepping itself for when that time actually comes. I think I actually did a podcast episode on that. I don't even know when at this point, probably a few months ago, but how like you will get what you're wanting to call in when you're actually ready. Like, cause there's certain things that I wanted, like I wanted to do this for so long, but like I was not ready in 2020. Like what value did I have to give? You know what I mean? Like I was still so early in my learning stages and growing and developing and like developing so many different skills to be able to be on here, even like mindset work that I had to work so much through to like even have the confidence and courage to show up here. It's like, the more that we can remember that and trust that, the more we can actually take a breath and be like, okay, I actually am right where I need to be. I'm moving at the perfect pace, and I can trust that this timing is happening for a reason, and I'll be to where I want to be once I'm ready, or else I would be there right now, kind of thing. It's like,
Exactly. No, I literally love that. And it gives us such like extra grace to be like, okay, yes, we do need to take action, but also it is in the divine timing. And also I think it's so
such a
important
balance.
to refine your craft, to refine your art, whatever it is. And so many people, you look at them and you're like, oh my God, they're an overnight success. And then you actually look at their biography and they've been doing what they've been doing for 10, 13
Yeah.
years. Like that is the reality that we don't see behind the scenes, is that everyone that we look up to, whether it be an artist or a business person or an expert in something or whatever it is, whoever we look up to, we think, oh my God, like they just got it all figured out. And like for the most part, they've been in the game for 7 to 13 years before even quote unquote making it, even like reaching a certain level of success, quote unquote, like whatever
Right.
that shit is. But when we see these people, it's like, oh, we think it happens instantaneously, because then all of a sudden they're everywhere. We see them everywhere. We're being exposed to them so much, so it feels instantaneous for us, but for them, it's the long
Yeah.
game. And I want to play the long game with my life. That's what I'm realizing. Like,
Yes.
I'm not here for the short instant
Yes.
gratification shit. I'm playing the long game with my life. I want a business that is built on such deep security and trust with myself that I wouldn't have if I was just thrown into it. I want to have a relationship. Like, me and my partner have been together 9 years, and people are like, are you gonna get engaged? Are you guys gonna get married? I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm 25. I'm about to
Yeah.
be 25. Like, I got a good like 5 years till like I want to get married. Like, I have
Right.
so much time. Like, I'm playing the long game with my life. Like, I'm not trying to get anywhere super fast. Like, I know that I have a lot of time on this earth, and that's why I think urgency is a trauma response. It comes
Yeah.
from honestly like a fear of
Scarcity.
death.
Mm-hmm.
Like feeling like, will I not be around long enough to
Mm-hmm.
do all the things that I want to do? And fear fueling anything is not the basis that I want to live on. So just like reminding myself, like, we are in no rush. You are not going to die. We are going to be okay.
No,
We're going to be
100%.
okay.
Yes, it's like I always say there's those two, umbrella frequencies of living in love or living in fear. And like that rush is always living in fear. And like kind of circling back to what you're saying, of you can kind of create and take action from two different spaces. It's like when you're living in fear, you feel this like obligatory energy, or you're feeling this need to rush, like you're doing things because you have to, and like desperation, when it's like if you're living in love. And because I've had those also experiences where I'm like, I need to do this now. Like I do, but it's like because of a full, like it's a full body yes. Like I can't
Yes.
not take action because this needs to be expressed. And it's like that is totally that's like an expression that needs to be, displayed, not like coming from a place of obligation. Like that's what I think is the difference between living in fear as opposed to living in love. And I honestly talked to my friend one of my really good friends about that constantly, like, because especially we're at that age now, you know, mid 20s, exactly what you said. Some people are getting engaged, some people are already married, some people from high school already have a kid, you know, some people are like super progressed in their career already. And it's like we think that we have these timelines and we're on this schedule that we need to be abiding by, and like feeling like we need to check off the box simply to check off the box. But it's like the whole entire point is the process of it. It's to live it, you know, it's to experience it. And it's like, it like makes me so emotional thinking of we have yet to live some of the best days of our life. Like we have yet to meet some of the most important people that we'll meet in our lifetime. Like my mom is 60. I know, and she's like met some of her best friends and she's 60, you know, and it's like I'm 25, like 24 right now, you know, I'm not even close to her age, and there's just so much ahead of us constantly, and it's almost a shame in a way, just like a bummer to be like, damn, like so many of us feel like we need to rush this. It's like we're living it now, like we need to enjoy it. It's kind of like, what's the point of skipping to the end of the movie and seeing the credits? It's like the whole point is watching the movie, you know? And so it's
Yes.
like I feel
Falling
that
in
all
love
the
with the
time.
process.
Yes. It's like, what am I
Yes.
rushing for? I want this already to be over with. It's like that's
Yeah.
the whole point. It's like, why would I
Honestly,
not cherish it?
totally. What I say to my friends all the time is like, whenever I get in my head about I'm not where I want to be yet, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
whole like narrative, that whole storyline
Classic.
that I'm
Yep.
telling myself that we all feel, that's very
Yep.
normal. I always tell myself, this is my fucking come up story. This is my come up story. Like when
I
someone writes
love
a
it.
biography about me one day, this is going to be
Yes.
my come up story. It'd be so boring if I was already where I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
be, like in career success or whatever. Like it'd be so boring. This is my come up story. It's part
Yes.
of the, like, it's such an adventure. And what I
I
also
love
will
that.
say that came up when you were saying all that was like how our generation needs to give ourselves so much grace. Don't want to sound like a fucking broken record, but the reason that I'm saying this is because the generation before us
Mm.
didn't have to figure out how to operate from love and from
Mhm.
intuition and from full body yeses. They really operated off of what was the impact of the world war and the industrial revolution, like, and then capitalism was born, and this productivity equaling our self-worth was born, and that generation like was so used to it that it was just their common programming. And I feel like our generation is coming in, golden age, age of Aquarius, all these big shifts happening in the greater collective picture that's saying like, no, we're actually learning to operate from a place of love, intuition, flow, working with cycles, not just like
Mhm.
going the same pace every single day. Like I'll have days where I'll have 2 weeks where I'll work really hard, and like 2 weeks where I'll like just really rest and chill or play with my friends and just like enjoy life. And I feel like us as humans and also as like entrepreneurs, even like especially, we're learning to
Mhm.
operate in such a different way that no one's done it before. So there's not a blueprint. So that's why it feels really confusing, because we're literally like babies, like learning how to walk, like learning how to crawl and then learning how to walk, and we're creating the blueprint right now. And that's what I always come back to whenever I'm being really hard on myself for like, you know, just how I'm still operating in fear sometimes. No matter how much
Right.
I've learned, no matter how much I've embodied, no matter how much I practice, like I still will go back to that fear and anxiety. And it's like I have to give myself grace and be like, girl, like we are the blueprint. Like
Right.
we're trying to just learn and figure it out as we go. And instead of that being a really heavy thing, being like, wow, how exciting is that for generations to come, that our generation gets to create this new standard for living out of love. It's just so
Right.
special.
If you don't mind, I kind of want to talk about your relationship, not like anything super personal, but
Yeah.
just like
We can get
how you.
personal.
Okay. But I just, because especially now speaking of the terms of like mother and father dynamics, kind of make me think of relationships. You said that you were in your relationship you've been in your relationship for 9 years now, which I think is super commendable.
And
Congratulations.
so
That's super
crazy.
respectable. I know.
It's weird. I'm like, it's weird. No one
So,
else around me gets it. I'm always like, I feel so alone, and not in my relationship, but alone in like
yeah, because
I've
that's,
outlasted all my friends' relationships and multiple of their relationships.
yeah,
I'm
dude,
like, it's so weird.
Well, no, that's like longer than some people have like been married. You know what I mean? Like that's such a long time, which is awesome. But so I guess I was just curious of how, because I feel like I definitely get some questions of kind of keeping your independence in a relationship and like being in that relationship for so long. You know, like that's, you've moved through so many ages, through so many different life phases with your same partner. And I think that is so beautiful that you guys have still been able to keep that compatibility and like adapt and flow with each other as each one's evolving. So how has that been, I guess, moving through different versions of you while keeping your same partner?
It's crazy because I genuinely don't feel like I've been with the same partner for 9 years. That's what I will say, because
Interesting.
it feels like both of us are so different than we were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It feels like we are both always constantly changing. And I remember being in college, which was like 5 years ago, and telling my friends, like, the one thing that I truly value. This is when I was single. Me and my partner, we broke up for like a year during college because we were doing long distance. So when I was like kind of thinking about relationships during that time, I said that, the most important thing to me in a relationship is somebody who's willing to grow, shift, change, and evolve with me.
Yeah.
I think I'm the type of person where I get like anxiety if I'm stagnant. Like, I
Mm.
love to move forward. I love to evolve. I love to shift. I love to grow. So I think it's a non-negotiable for me that my partner also has those qualities. I think both of us go to therapy. He is also like on his journey, not as far in as I am, obviously, in terms of like, it's just such a big part of my life. For him,
Yeah.
it's more like a 20% part of his life, but he's still on his journey, very conscious, very aware, very awake, very willing to learn, to be open-minded. And I think that's how we have, you know, really made it work, is because we both have changed and evolved. And there has been so many cycles and periods where I do feel like we are a little bit mismatched, but then it always ends up like coming back where we end up matching again, because we're both just growing and changing and evolving at different rates and in different ways. So I think it really has taught me that like unconditional understanding of, I don't need my relationship to like be my whole life or like be super perfect, because in fact, like, we definitely like argue and like get very honest and like have had tons of roadblocks and tons of thresholds to cross, just like starting to date at such a young age. We brought a lot of our tendencies as kids, as teenagers, into our adult relationships. So I think that it's just literally knowing that we're growing and changing and evolving, and accepting that, and accepting when we also are mismatched, and not making it mean that there's something wrong with us or there's something wrong with him. I think radical responsibility is the biggest thing that has changed my life in the relationship. I think both of us having our own individual goals has been a really big thing that has kept us together, because I'm able to really focus on my purpose. He's able to focus on his purpose, and then we're able to support each other. But I'm not going to lie and say that it's easy, because it has not been easy at all. Like, it has not been easy. Like, even like 2 months ago was like the first time in a couple years where I was like, should we break up? And I kind of was like, do we need to break up? And, just being willing to have those tough conversations, I think, is what it takes to move through it, is honest communication. And the thing that I always say that I'm like so grateful for in our relationship is like, relationships are the shortcut to healing, because they show you all your triggers. They show you
Love
every
that.
single place where you feel insecure. They show you every single place where you feel codependent and not good enough. Like, they are going to bring those things to the surface. And I used to be so scared of negative emotions that didn't feel good, that felt painful, that felt icky, that felt uncomfortable. And now I see those emotions when they come up, and I'm like, thank you, because they wouldn't come to
Yes.
the surface if they weren't wanting to heal. The reason why relationships are a shortcut to healing is because they bring those things to the surface so that we can have awareness of them. We can give them some love. We can ask ourselves, what do you need within this security, within this insecurity, within this trigger, within this past programming? and what do you need? And I ask myself, what do I need? Sometimes my partner, but it's really taught me like I am emotionally responsible for myself and I am responsible for my regulation. And so honestly, I know that was so much. Sorry. That was like a lot of information within one. You bring me back. Relationships are crazy. I could talk for like 10 hours on everything I've learned, but
I love it though. That was so mature. That was so profound. Like that was just literally emotional intelligence at its finest. I relate to that so much, especially how you said that, relationships, because they're like a mirror for you. They are totally a mirror for you. And I feel like the biggest thing that I learned, because I went through, like, I was super more into my spirituality and kind of more mindfulness back in like 2021 to 2022. And I felt like I was like, wow, like I've really healed so many triggers, like blah, blah, blah. But it's like, sis, like you're only so healed when it's like, are you quote unquote healed, which, it's always an ongoing process, so that doesn't exist. But B, it's like, are you healed or are you living in a vacuum right now with no triggers? And like, that's how kind of I was, you know what I mean? I kept a really small circle. I wasn't in a relationship. Like I was doing my own thing. So it's like, I'm not, that's super commendable to feel very fulfilled and happy in your own presence, in your own company, in your own life. Like that's great. I'm not taking that away from myself. But at the same time, it's like there's still so much more to heal when you're actually around other people and you actually are having triggers in your environment for you to actually now have opportunities to say, okay, this is now past programmings are now coming up because they're being pinged because there actually is a trigger here. Now I can actually create space and figure out, okay, am I going to be acting from past programmings, from my ego, or am I going to choose from, to respond from how my higher self would? And I've been in a relationship now for like a year and maybe 3 months now at this point, and that's was something
honestly
that
great.
was huge.
That's like a year, like is a huge threshold to cross. I feel like that's like you're really like, oh, I could see myself like co-creating a life with this person. Like once a year hits, you're no longer like playing around.
100%, yeah. And I feel like I've learned so much in this relationship, more so about myself, but because of exactly what you said, they're reflecting back to you things that you need to heal. There's more triggers. And I kind of described it to him as, I think when we have experiences when you're a kid, there's all these traumas, and I kind of picture them more so as something underground, like little landmines. And so it's kind of like, I feel like you can only quote unquote heal. I'm using that term lightly, but like heal different triggers you have by yourself, when you're exploring. Like there's certain landmines, how should I explain this? There's certain landmines that you can only hit with other people. So it's like there was only so much work I could do by myself, I guess is what I'm trying to say, with healing my triggers without someone else sparking different triggers within me, So there were certain things that I didn't know that I needed to heal until he came in and we had different interactions and he said different things. And for some reason I was like, whoa, that pinged something in me. I feel triggered. This was a whole area that I didn't even see that was underground because I never actually hit it myself. You know what I mean? And it was a landmine for me. And I realized, oh, this is something else I need to heal, but he showed it to me. And so it's like, there's been so much more healing having
I love that you
around.
said that. Like, am I really like not triggered, or am I just not being exposed to things out of my comfort zone?
Yes.
Like,
even better way to put it, 100%.
Yeah,
it's like, are you pushing
that's
yourself?
profound. Exactly. Yeah. And in relationships, what I will say is I couldn't be his mentor or his healer or his therapist. I think that's what like people in general, I will say women, but honestly, all relationships, there's like typically a more like anxious attached partner, avoidant attached partner. Usually the anxious is trying to fix the avoidant. Like there's all these like common patterns that we see within relationships that come up. And I was like, definitely before Hobbs going to therapy, that's my boyfriend's name, Hobbs, I would definitely try to like fix him and tell him, and like him as an avoidant, he doesn't want to like hear me telling him what to do. That's gonna trigger him and like his sense of like independence and feeling criticized and things like that. So for me, I think having a partner who's willing to do the work on their own is a non-negotiable for me, because I'm not their mom, I'm not their therapist, I'm not their partner. And I realized it was up to me to change that within myself for him to begin to change. We think, oh, I just have to wait for this person to change and then I'll back off. Like if they get more responsible, then I'll stop telling them what to do or stop criticizing them or stop offering them feedback like on what they should do or how they're acting. But it's like, I actually instead, the real solution there was I needed to step back first to give him space to step forward. I needed to be in more my surrender and more my feminine to allow him to step up and take action. And I think partners going to therapy is a non-negotiable for me. Like, you don't have to go all the time. You don't have to go every single week, but you better be self-aware and reflecting. And, you know, we all have shit to heal and move through. And it's not something to be demonized, but it is something that's a non-negotiable for me. It's just like, if you want to be with me, who is constantly changing and evolving, then I definitely, a non-negotiable is that you are also working on yourself and hopefully getting help from the outside with somebody else, because I want our relationship to be, you know, obviously I want to support my partner, but we can't be our partner's therapist. And I think a lot of people probably will relate to this, even with friends. Like, we try to like fix them. And when we try to quote unquote fix people, we're enabling them to not realize that they are so capable and independent and so capable on their own. We hold them back from that. And real love is being like, I believe in you. You got this. If you need help, I got a professional. If you need help, I got a professional that you can call. Because I don't think that's my job. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Like, so I think that was a big thing that like has made our relationship last. I think that's what, and also like not making like one disagreement or one fight or one argument spiral into making meaning that does not exist. I feel like what people do is we make meaning out of one thing. We'll see one thing that our partner does, and we'll make this whole story, this whole meaning. They don't care about me. They don't, the blah, blah, blah. Like, they don't do this. They don't do that. And it's just like stopping yourself and being like, what story am I in right now? And sometimes I will say some people's partners suck and they should break up with him. That's like a whole nother topic.
Takeaway. Yeah.
But if you do have like a partner who's willing to grow and change and evolve with you, like allowing yourself to not get caught up in the stories and not making it mean when they do one thing. Yeah, what you said, assuming. Like I'm assuming is like the worst thing that we can do for ourselves. It's just like, why are we assuming? Like, let's get curious instead. And that's what I love to think about instead of being like, don't do this, don't do that. I think about what I do want to do. What is the medicine to assumptions? What is the medicine to expectations? What is the medicine for making meaning in stories and running wild with it? It's literally just getting curious, asking questions, being willing to listen, being willing to see another perspective, another side. I realized this a couple years ago, and it completely changed my life, that if I want my external world to change, like, I'm the one that needs to change first. And that radical responsibility saves me every single time. Whenever I'm spiraling, it's because I'm in victim mode. And and you know, obviously there are situations where somebody, you know, is being not treated right and like maybe would be the victim in that situation. But what I will say is a lot of times the little things that we get upset about, like the little daily things, we put ourselves in this like, oh my God, poor me, this is happening to me. And it's just like, okay, well, what can you shift within you? Like if I am freaking out because my partner doesn't want to hang out with me every single day and they don't want to spend every moment with me, I need to check myself and be like, is that my partner's responsibility? Or am I being fucking codependent, and do I need to heal this codependency within me? So I think actually being in a relationship has taught me how to truly be independent because I've been forced to look at the parts of myself that are codependent, that are a mesh, that don't want to be alone, that is like the part of me that's so scared of my own feelings and company sometimes. And it's just like, it's so scary until we actually face it. And then we're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Like a good little cry, a good little reflection, a good little moment. Like, we can feel this, we can do this, we can look at the darker, deeper parts of ourselves. Like, so I realized when I change me, everything outside of me changes. Like, down to the T. Like, I've literally had people like ignoring me, not texting me back for business or whatever. Like, and like one time I literally sat there and reflected on it and like did this whole unraveling in my head in meditation, just being like, okay, but you're expecting this of that person. You never know what's going on in somebody else's life. And immediately during that meditation, they texted me back after
That's
3
amazing.
months of not hearing from them, of being ghosted. The moment that I change it within me, the whole energy changes. So I've seen like those pieces of proof where it's just like, oh shit, like the moment that I shifted that energy,
Right.
they actually came straight to me.
And the other thing I wanted to say, circling back to, because I feel like you said so many great points that I wanted to unpack, but just circling back to not assuming with your partner, like that is such, I think, a huge source of conflict for a lot of people, is that they do make assumptions in the relationship and then they don't talk it out or clarify the assumptions, and then those things build, and then they have more little instances that cause, you know, more resentment to build up that still don't ever get unpacked, and then it just kind of is this small, you know, brick by brick, and then eventually it's the straw that broke the camel's back. And not to reference the greatest book of all time, but The Four Agreements, by Don Miguel Ruiz, that's like one of the four agreements is to never make assumptions. And it's crazy. Again, if you haven't read that book, it's The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I've talked about it so much on my podcast.
It's so good.
It's so basic. It's such
the prerequisite for life.
For everything. For everything. It's literally basically the life's Bible. Like, it's so good. And it's so simple. It's such an easy read, but it's like the four agreements that he speaks about are applicable to like so many different life scenarios. And they just, anyways, they always make sense. So I think that's so big, is just really not making assumptions with your partner. And then actually just how you said, like thoroughly communicating everything when things come up. Like that's been a big thing for my boyfriend and I, is like when something comes up, we're hashing it out. Like we're not, if we need to sit on it for a few days, that's fine. I'm definitely that person who I'm like, I'm overwhelmed, I need to think about it, and then like we'll talk. But we're still unpacking it at some point. You know what I mean? Even if it seems small, but I got irritated, like we're going to communicate about it and like fully clear it, because I feel like those little things that build up can really be deadly. That like resentment that can really come back to kind of bite you guys if you don't clear it. And the other thing I wanted to say about your codependency, that you were saying that you kind of realized that you had codependent tendencies from your relationship. I feel like something I have realized too is like a love language of mine is definitely words of affirmation. And I think it is important to honor your partner's love languages and like show up for them. But at the same time, I feel like I was really seeking words of affirmation as really strong validation from my partner. And my partner isn't as like super expressive, I will say, in that sense. Like that's not his main love language. But so essentially I'm just trying to say that was a big takeaway for me, that I realized of like a wounding in myself, was that I really crave words of affirmation as a way to validate myself, and not necessarily like in a way of, because I'm not giving myself that validation. So like that's been something I've been working on, is like giving myself what I need to hear, not needing this outside validation to tell myself that I'm worthy or that I'm good enough. Like I can believe that myself without feeling like I need a partner to tell me that to then believe it about myself,
Totally. And also knowing it's okay for your partner to not know exactly what you need. And sometimes we do have to kind of like teach our partners like what we need. And it's all about like the delivery, like we were talking about earlier, the way it lands. Using I language is really important. Using I, me language rather than you don't do this, you don't do that. Like for example, my love language is like questions. Like I'm a Gemini moon. Curiosity literally is my love language. Like I love asking people questions, and usually the ways that we show love are the ways that we want to receive love. So I just know that questions are a big thing for me. Where my partner he's more like grounded energy, where like you and me, like we're more like airy, we can bop, chat. And he's more grounded, and sometimes like he has nothing to say. Like literally, and I feel like
nothing. Like
I'm like, hello, but
dude,
it's
literally same.
It's like loving those parts of them. I'm like, wow, I love that you ground me. Like maybe I wouldn't want to date myself, is what I realized. Like maybe I really need someone to balance me out. But then also like when I realized, for example, I love questions. Maybe my partner doesn't ask me questions. He kind of like assumes that I'll tell him, because I just like I'm a yapper. So I'll just tell him like everything. But I realized, okay, I need to step back and allow him to ask me questions so he can practice. And so instead of being like, you never ask me questions, you never do this, like blah, blah, blah. Instead being like, oh, I've kind of noticed lately, like the way that I really feel loved is when someone's really curious about me. Like when we go out to dinner, like, do you think that you can work on maybe just like asking me questions about myself, because I know that I'll tell you and I know that you know that, but I feel like it would really make me feel loved if that was something we could do. And like that delivery of being like, this is what I need, rather than being like, you don't do this.
It feels way less of an attack.
Totally. No one wants to be attacked. If you attack someone, they're going to get defensive. That's a big
100%.
big lesson I've had to learn. Cause like I can definitely be like, no bullshit. Like, you don't fucking do this.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, well, if I go at someone, they're going to fucking be like, girl, like the avoidance going to hit. So it's like, I think for me, changing my language and communicating to my partner what I need without being like, you don't ever do this. And also eliminating any language that says always or never. Like, you always do this. You never do this. You always are out with your friends. You never text me back. Whatever it is, like those types of language, when we see that when we see those types of language in our vocabulary, we know it's our ego. Like, it's immediately ego. Like, because the soul sees nuance. The soul sees the gray area, or like the rainbow in between. But the ego is going to be like, it's black or white, it's this or that. I need to have this firm story so that I can feel safe. Like, that's what the ego says. The ego says, if I can conceptualize it, if I can tell myself a story, an overarching story, then I can predict what's going to happen, and then I'm going to feel safe. But it's like the soul knows there's so much nuance. There's so much in between. Like, it's not always, and it's never.
Yeah.
Never say never. Yeah. In the words of JB, never say never.
But it's true. Like, it gets so triggering when you say that, because it's also like discounting the other person as well. It's like, because it's not actually always, or it's not actually never. It's like you're discounting all the times they have showed up for you. But I've seen that as well in my own relationship, of just openly communicating my needs, because my partner and I have had to communicate a lot about learning how to love each other, of what we are needing from one another. And like a big thing for me was that I really like, as cliche as it is, I really like flowers. And like that was never something my boyfriend really thought to do. Like, it's not necessarily his first urge to like show love. Like, he's way more acts of service, which is fine, and I appreciate that and I love it too. But so that was exactly what I had to do as well, just like an open conversation. And I wasn't like, there's all these people getting flowers and you don't ever get me flowers. Like, it's like, who, even if they love you so much, it's like no one, like, think about your best friend. If you obviously love your best friend so much, if they came to you saying that they wanted to be loved in a different way, and that's how they came at it, their angle, you'd be like, okay, well, that was super rude. Like, I don't really want to show up for you in that way.
Yeah, you're like that. Yeah, it's just it's like if someone comes at you.
Yeah, and I think like one of the best ways to inspire, like to get a change in someone, I guess, quote unquote, is to inspire that within them to want to do that. And so it's like no one's going to feel inspired to take that action out of love if they just felt this attack out of hate, kind of this intention that you were out of. So it's just like, it does so much more when you can actually speak from kindness, and like you said, using that perspective of just, this is just sharing my needs, and it's just way more of a gentle, softer delivery, that usually there's so much more receptive to, and it gets you so much further. One last question while on this topic though, do you have any advice for someone listening who is really feeling like they're struggling with finding or keeping their independence in a relationship, especially, sometimes it can be hard to be on your spiritual or self-expansive journey if your partner maybe isn't in that same lane as you, or if you're spending too much time with your partner. So just, do you have any advice for anyone in that situation of keeping that independence in a relationship?
I love like actionable advice. Like, I love like the theory and the mindset, but I think like an actionable piece of advice that I'm still learning to step into, but I'm realizing is so powerful, is to actually like cut the fucking texting. Because for example, like if your partner, right now my partner is away and he's on like vacation with his twin sister, and it's like, if I'm expecting him to text right at that moment, it's going to cause triggers within me. It's going to cause miscommunications because of tone not matching up. And I realized that texting is kind of this like codependent, constantly trying to reach out. Right. And the most fights that we get into will be because I'll be like, well, I don't give a fuck what I'm saying. I'm on my fucking phone. I'm texting. And it's like, if we actually hop on a call, I'm not going to say the same things that I would say over text. I just wouldn't, because it's way easier to type it and be like, well, it doesn't hold a lot of meaning because it's just words on a screen rather than saying it with your own voice. So I think texting has been a big thing because I know a lot of people get triggered, like when their partner goes out or something like that, and expecting them to text them. And it's just like, well, first of all, you just got to trust your partner. And if you can't trust them, that's a whole nother thing. So I think an actual piece of advice would be like, can you stop needing to reach out all the time? Like, can you just really make the moments that you have together quality time, whether that's like hopping on a phone call or a FaceTime if you're away from each other, or just seeing each other in real life and catching up then, rather than being like constantly up to date with what they're up to. Like, you don't need to know what your partner's up to. You also don't really need to know their location. Like me and my partner removed each other's locations after having it for like 5 years. And I feel so much better not having my partner's location, because I'm like, we can just trust each other. Right. We're not cheating on each other. Nothing's happening. But also at the same time, like, what I've learned is like little things, like, okay, he goes to a bar and like a girl comes up to him and like he talks to her for like 2 minutes, whatever. Like, I've had to realize like those little things like that, like, don't matter as much as I thought they did when I was like 19. When I was 19, that was the fucking end of the world. If my partner was like, I even looked at another girl, I was like, I'll fucking kill you. No, whoa, that's intense. But like now as I'm getting older, I'm just like, the more that I can just be like, I trust, like I'm hot as fuck. Why would my partner cheat on me? I'm so hot. Like, and also just knowing like, if you don't have trust with your partner, you don't have anything. So I feel like that's really helped me as an actionable step. But also with independence, I would say like spending time with yourself is actually everything. Like, I love to just go somewhere in nature, put my phone away, bring my journal, bring my oracle cards, bring my pipe. I smoke a little bit of weed. I hang out with myself. I journal. And I think just having like, I honestly hang out with myself probably like twice a week, I would say, on average. And I think just having that time allows you to be like, okay, like I am good on my own. Yeah. And like, yeah, so it's tough though. It's tough. I will say like being independent within a relationship is part of the lesson, which I think brings us back to like the beauty of the process, the beauty of growing up, and the come up story that we're all creating within ourselves as like, okay, but like I get to learn this lesson through these relationships. And yeah, I think just spending a lot of time with myself is really important, and also just like really focusing on quality time over like quantity contact.
But I'm the same way with the texting. Like, that was like, I feel like all high school relationships, you're ding, 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 like texting all day, every day. And that was just, my boyfriend's a bit older than me, and I think he just was more outgrown of that. But like, I remember when we first started talking, I thought that was still something that was like expected in my brain of like, oh, if you're dating someone, you text all the time. But that's just something we've never done. It just was kind of
it's way better.
It's so much better.
It's like, way better. And then you get to catch up in real life. Like, I don't want to know what you're up to all the time, because then what are you going to talk about?
Yes. And I just feel like I have space to like live my life like outside of him and our relationship. It's like, because that's what's important, is you're still a human. So feeling like you don't need that contact with them all the time gives you that space to like breathe and remember you're your own identity, like you're your own person. So I think it's huge. So
I also will say, I love what you said about the goals, and something that is an actionable piece of advice is something that I do like every month, 2 months, month and a half, maybe. Usually around like full moons and new moons, it kind of just like comes through naturally, the inspiration to do this. But I love to game plan my life. Like, I love to like physically write it down, and I'll kind of go through the categories. So I'll look at like my career goals, even like my joy, my fun, my play, my friendships, like kind of like that category. Goals within my relationships. What do I want that to look like? What do I want my personal self, my habits, my spiritual journey, the time that I spend with myself, like what do I want that to look like, my health. And I kind of like look at all these different categories, and I love to write down kind of what I want out of them. And then you realize you're the center of your solar system. You are the sun. And your partner is just one of your beautiful planets that's in your life, and that relationship is so amazing. But the more that you can kind of be like, my relationship isn't my whole life, like I have so much other things going for me, you realize you become less and less codependent. something that I will say that relates to this is when I'm trying to change, instead of being like, I don't want to do this, I'm trying to take this away. I'm trying to take away codependency. I'm trying to remove dependency on my partner. I'm trying to remove like these triggers. Instead of thinking like of taking things away, I think of actually adding more good things so that there's not space for the codependency. So if I add more focus on my goals, focus on my health, focus on my, joy and play and adventure and travel, then there's not as much space for the codependency. Right. And I don't even have to think about getting rid of it because my focus is just elsewhere.
Okay, so at the end of the podcast episodes, I always finish with an affirmation. So I don't know if you want to share your affirmation. Really, it could be anything that you're working through, an affirmation that's really speaking with you right now, something that you're really trying to embody.
Yeah, I think my main affirmation I've been really claiming and saying every single day is like, my success is inevitable.
Oh, that's crazy you say that.
Really? Is that like yours too?
Yes, I have. Really? Yes. That's so crazy.
Wait. No, I love that because I think like coming from the energy of, okay, well, I'm maybe not exactly where I want to be yet, but the operative word there is yet. It's literally on its way. I'm on my way. I'm enjoying the ride as we go. And that makes us realize like, okay, we get to enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, because my success is inevitable. It literally is.
True.
Like, and I genuinely believe it. And I feel that for everyone around me too. And I feel like holding the people that we love and witnessing them and being like, I see everything you're going to do. Like, I look at my friends and I'm just like, I see everything you're supposed to do in this world and I see your potential and I like let them know that. I'm like, your success is inevitable. Like, I see everything you're going to do. And I feel like it's just so important to also tell ourselves, but also tell the people that we love that, because we all need to hear it sometimes from an outside 100%. Source.
So my affirmation, this is like a little bit random, but I've just have been working on being a little bit more confident with my speech lately and just having, I don't know, more declaration when I'm speaking. So my affirmation is, I speak my conscious truth with confidence and conviction. Wow. I speak my conscious truth with confidence and conviction. I always repeat it twice. Sorry, that was a habit. But
no, I love it. That's honestly so beautiful. I feel like
thank you.
It's also like kind of like a mirror of the process, because it's like you're using such beautiful words and like those are like convicting words kind of. So it's like mirrors it, which I love.
True.
I love that. I share my, one more time. What is it?
I speak my conscious truth with confidence and conviction.
I speak my conscious truth with confidence and conviction.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kela. You literally are even better than I ever imagined. You're so brilliant. I loved having this conversation. I feel like we clicked so much. I admire you so much. I look up to you so much. I thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom. I feel like we dropped some golden nuggets in this epi. I hope a lot of people can relate to it. So thank you so much for your time and being here with us. And if you want to let us know, like, where can we find you? Where are you on socials? All of that good stuff.
Well, if you like this podcast, I have a podcast called Skinny Dipping, and that's where we strip down and we dive in on the mind, the body, and the soul in order to create actionable change in our lives. I love the actionable steps. And right now I am premiering the Era of the Phoenix, which has been so funny because I was like, had this idea, this muse of the Phoenix come through, and I was like, I'm having this like Era of the Phoenix moment, but then I like looked at my life and I was like, all the changes inwards, like none of it is like Phoenix energy of burning it to the ground. But the crazy thing is I feel like the muses and the messages that come through sometimes are foreshadowing. And I think now I'm realizing this is why I'm moving through this season of the Phoenix right now, is because like in 3 months, I actually am gonna change my whole life. Like I'm ready to, I love music. I like want to make music so badly. It's my first love, piano, guitar, singing. That's like my childhood love. I want to make fucking music. I want to continue, obviously, the podcast and everything that I'm doing. I want to solo travel, do all those things. So things are going to change for me a lot. So I feel like right now it's funny because the Era of the Phoenix was a foreshadowing for what's actually coming. At first I was like, why the Era of the Phoenix? And now I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it now. So you can check me out on Skinny Dipping the podcast. Listen to the new season of Era of the Phoenix. So many good episodes. So good. We're going to have you on the podcast at some point too.
Ooh,
I would love to do it in real life though. In real.
Yes, tell me where and when. I'll come.
Usually
to
in
Maui.
LA.
We can LA.
Because Spotify's free. And I love bringing people there. It's like so fun. It's so fun. Like, it's just like the funnest day ever. Like, I love it.
I would
it's like,
love that.
It gets me so high. Like, I'm like, this is so fun.
Yeah, okay, I'd be so stoked for that.
So that'd be so fun to have you on at some point. So Skinny Dipping the podcast, and then all my platforms. I'm really active on TikTok and Instagram. And then eventually I'm going to be getting into YouTube too. So Kela Rose on YouTube. Sundays KK on all platforms. That's my personal. I'm Kela Rose, the host of Skinny Dipping, and that's where you can find me. Yay.
Thank you so much. You're so brilliant. I highly recommend her podcast, especially if you enjoy listening to Live Fit Listens. Very similar, but like on steroids with her own way. It's just so much steroids. I just love it so much, and I just think it's so brilliant. I just love you, and I'm so glad we're able to talk today. So thank you so much.
You too.
And
thanks. This was so impactful. I'm like blown away. I want to share this episode. I'm like, this is so
totally
good.
Can.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye.